How's it going? I recently went to a urban farm in New York with my friend Pete, and I had the opportunity to interview this man named Gill, who was actually running this farm. And we had the chance of walking from the front to the back and checking out his whole area. And I had the opportunity of eating a ton of things from these plots, and yeah, it was a learning experience, and it's really cool to see people doing things like this. So here's just an interview of this man Gill giving us a walk through his urban farm in Queens, New York.
All right, so where are we?
We are at Smiling Hogshead Ranch. We're here in Long Island City, Queens, New York City. We're 2 train stops and 2 blocks away from Grand Central Station. So you can take the 7 train out of Manhattan, get off at the Hunters Point stop and walk a couple blocks and you'll find this place. It's kind of hard to miss, but it's really easy to miss at the same time. We have a vegetated slope here going up to an abandoned railroad property or a railroad track. We've kind of managed some of the wild natives and the invasives around here. We're kind of curating them. What we have is a lot of this milkweed, which is host plant for the monarch butterfly and caterpillars. But we also have lots of mugwort. We have a bunch of hairy vetch, which fixes nitrogen in the soil. We have, between these posts, we have some heritage variety pear and apple trees going along this edge that we hope to espalier and create a living fence, a living edible fence here. And then right along this side we have a couple peaches, a couple plums, and then as we get in there we have a cherry tree, we have some currants, we have a few fig trees, we have over a dozen blueberries and raspberries, blackberries, edible fruit hedge, a fedge if you will, right along the railroad tracks. We've got our compost systems. People can come drop off their compost. We're a compost collection site here in Queens. And then right over that hump, you can't see it from the street, but we've got row crops going on. We've got some raised beds that we put in last year and this year. It goes back further. We had our compost operations back there last year. And as you go even further back behind this building over here, we have a clearing where we've cleared out and we have some public programming. We have yoga that happens every other weekend for the public. We have workshops that we put on. We put on a bioremediation workshop with mushrooms. We talk about biodynamic farming. We talk about organic farming, integrated pest management, how to manage the fruit trees and bushes that we have, and put on little workshops like how to make herbal teas and whatnot. Just fun little stuff. We open it up. We encourage people to come with their ideas. If you have an idea for a workshop, we're more than happy to host. So there's lots of different things happening here. Across the street, we have 8 street trees that just got put in. They're all golden rain trees. We got a grant from the Citizens Committee NYC a couple months ago as a Love Your Block grant. We got some money to clean up that site back in the back. And part of that grant is we had to work with city agencies. So we worked with DSNY. They came and picked up over 100 bags of trash that we had removed from there. And we worked with parks. We requested street trees along this edge. So we got all these street trees and they're looking really good. We've been taking care of them. Actually, earlier this week on Wednesday, we planted perennial natives right in the tree pits so that those will grow up and attract more pollinators and be a little bit of a learning experience for the people that are walking around here to see the plants that need to be here that are appropriate for this site. So we're really excited about that. So in 2011, we came together. There was a group of about a dozen of us, and we decided to start a new garden in Queens. We weren't really willing to wait on waiting lists for the community gardens around here, which can be upwards of 2 to 3 years to get a little 4x4 plot in a community garden. There's such a rare resource here in the city. So we just decided to start a new garden. And we cleared basically from where I'm standing up to maybe that green structure up there. We rented a rototiller 3 weekends in a row. We cleared all the trash. We removed stones, we sod busted, and we just cleaned the area out. We created these rows in this crazy perpendicular because it's against the slope. We want to be perpendicular to the slope so that we wouldn't have our minerals and nutrients washed out by the rain. Here's the low point is down over here, and the high point is up over there where that train track comes across and connects. That's the high point of the property. We can't be up there because it's an active line still, but we are down here And we did this without asking anybody if we could. We just came and did it. We knew who owned the property, but we knew that if we asked permission that we would get rejected. So we just went ahead and moved forward with our plans. We created row crops here. We created a planting plan. And we have a rotation. So every year things get rotated in and out of beds. We have some beds that lay fallow, and we just grow cover crops on them. This is a couple beds of garlic. This was our asparagus, which is a wonderful perennial plant. We have a lot of asparagus and perennials off in this area over here. We have some grapevines. Along this edge, it's a natural wooded area, and it's really nice. It kind of keeps cover from the other side as well. We have some fruit and nut trees planted over there as well. Here we have our composting. We've been moving our compost around. Moving your compost from different places on the site is a great way to really get a lot of nutrients in your soil in different areas. So we worked with the Queens Library for a while, and we had a community composting site in Woodside. We brought all of that here with our work trike. And we also are a community composting site in Queens, so anybody can come at any time and just put their compost in our bins. We provide browns so that they can cover them up. Hopefully they know what they're doing, because that helps us a lot. And we have volunteer days around the composting to get that processed. It's labor intensive to work with compost, but it's a really beneficial thing. It's really useful as we're building the soils around here. These urban soils we had tested at the beginning, at the outset, before we even had those big work days, those first months. And everybody was okay with what was in the soil. It's not the best soil around. It was graded okay for agricultural use by the USDA, but not okay for like children to play in. So there's different levels of toxicity. And this being a railroad site, a lot of times buildings are the #1 cause of like lead being in soil because of paint chipping off when it used to be the lead paint. Or having a site that used to be like an automotive repair or body shop or something like that, where they're just dumping antifreeze and oil and all sorts of stuff in the soil. So this has been historically a dumping site, but it happens around the perimeter of the property. And you'll see actually this edge over here, there's a hill, there's a mound, a berm along this whole edge. And really, if you start digging down into that, that's a bunch of construction fill and just trash that people have been dumping over the years. We haven't really got down into it, and I don't know if we ever will. We're just going to continue to build on top of it and just reinforce that edge and keep on selectively thinning out some of the trash trees, the tree of heaven, and some of the other stuff that really is old or just doesn't need to be there, and just kind of reconstituting the flowering and the edibles that we have here. One of the things that we did initially too was to start planting these trees. The idea was like, if the property owner decided that they didn't want us here, they could tell us to leave and we could pack up our stuff and we could get out of here, but we'd still have trees on site that they would have to come and remove themselves. So that was one of our initial things. We have a lot, like I said, over a dozen blueberry bushes along the other side of this railroad track as you go down. Raspberries, blueberries. We're really into perennials. We, of course, you know, the annual edibles are great. Tomatoes, squash, your garden variety herbs and vegetables, we're doing most of them. We have several varieties of any particular vegetable that you could probably name. So that's what we've been doing down here. We've, ever since 2012, a year and a half after we started this operation, we were contacted by the property owner. They were out here doing a survey. They're actually decommissioning one of the train tracks that runs through this property, so they were just taking a look at the land. And they got in touch with me, and we had a fairly serious conversation about what we were doing, why we didn't ask permission. You know, I told them that we thought that if we had asked for permission that we would have been denied, and we just wanted to move forward with our plans and ask for forgiveness. And they pretty much corroborated that that's what would have happened. We wouldn't have got to do this if we had asked for permission. So a lot of times it is a lot better to just do what you know is the right thing, and then if you have to ask for forgiveness later on, then that's the best route to take sometimes. So we're well along that route now. We've incorporated as a nonprofit organization. We've got insurance. We've had pro bono's lawyers look at our garden license agreement with the property owner, and we've revised it a few times. We actually recently have submitted that. We're just waiting for the countersign to come back, and we're hoping that we can take access to this land on a year-to-year basis and really do something great with it. And we're just moving forward, rocking and rolling. As we do become a more official garden, we can start cooperating and working with the school next door and other public schools. We can work with nonprofit organizations in an official capacity. Because right now, I mean, even though we have kind of a verbal agreement with the property owner, anyone here is technically trespassing. So we can't really invite school groups out. We can't really have a jobs training program with a nonprofit organization because of that risk, you know. So we initially weren't really thrilled about the prospect of working with the property owner. We just wanted to do what we were doing. But once we started to let out the word that we're doing this, and more people found out about it, more and more people got interested, and it just became apparent to us that we can't do guerrilla style forever. And the non-traditional direct action of guerrilla gardening has worked. I mean, we are coming into an agreement with the property owners. So that non-traditional direct action has served its purpose. And as we move into becoming a formal garden and signing that garden license agreement, it won't necessarily be a direct action anymore. It will be a successful project that has its roots in grassroots organization and direct action and all of these amazing things. And this couldn't have happened if we didn't go out on a limb and just put ourselves out there and risk whatever it is we could have been fined or whatever. So we're really looking forward to moving past that. So up here we have our raised beds. Most of these raised beds were built this year. We hosted the container garden track of the Urban Agriculture Conference with the Horticultural Society of New York just a couple weekends ago. And I built this as a kind of demonstration to show people how suburgated raised bed works as a kind of non-traditional container gardening. Raised beds are, of course, very large containers that people in cities use. We have to separate our edible plant growing operation from the native soils. So we're essentially making a container on top of the ground by using some sort of separation fabric. We used vinyl from old billboards for this. And what I did was I dug down several inches and I put the vinyl down and created this bathtub with it. I stapled it to the sides, to the bottom of this frame, and then I put gravel in and made a wave essentially with the gravel. And then I put landscape fabric on top of that and filled it in with soil. And the soil goes down and it touches the bathtub, that pool of water that's in the gravel. And there's also a corrugated PVC pipe down there. And we can fill that PVC pipe with the one coming up here. And we're gonna raise this up like we have some of these other ones where there's multiple layers, so that we have a thicker soil profile that when we can plant our vegetables in it. But this was one of the things we did on that day. And then we also had some other amazing people come in from some other urban farms in the city and teach other workshops about other different types of container gardening, including like sub-irrigated 5-gallon buckets and the milk crates that you can line with a landscape fabric and just plant inside and be able to move those around. So it's kind of important. It's a big issue here in the city where we have lots that we can use temporarily, but they are slated for construction. It's either on hold or they just don't have enough time. So we're gonna have our water catchment area over here. It'll be nice covered area. It's gonna be clear polycarbonate, so it'll still be sunny, but it'll be covered. We'll have some respite from the rain a little bit. It'll be a fairly large area. It's going to be, I think, 16 by 32 feet. So we'll be able to have another area where we can have workshops. If it's ever raining, we can all duck up under there. We've been using that area as kind of a seating area in the past already. Oh, check this out. This is some mushrooms that we grew. These are edible mushrooms. These are oyster mushrooms. We use the oyster mushrooms on the ground between the railroad tracks to clean the soils. but we can also grow them outside of our native urban soils. And what I use is just coffee grinds, and the mycelium runs in the coffee grinds, and we get this nice white thread-like structure. It forms a dense network of single-celled thread-like structures, and that's the organism that lives underground. It's eating these coffee grinds, and then the fruit is the mushroom. The mushroom is just the fruiting body of a large organism that we usually don't see. It's in the fungi family. It's not a plant, so it acts a lot differently than plants do. So we're also using these mycelium between the railroad tracks. Up here just a little way, we have the tarps and the cardboard on top of the middle of the railroad tracks. All that is filled with mulch and coffee grinds that we've myceliated with these oyster mushrooms. And the idea is that they've been shown to be able to break apart these toxins in the soil and really just reassemble them to be beneficial, and not only beneficial but just non-toxic. So we're breaking apart hopefully the creosote inside these railroad ties. And if you have any other site that has other stuff, this is kind of like the first phase of a bioremediation process, is micro-remediation, and then you can come through and pull out some of the heavy metals with plants in a process known as phytoremediation. And then there's micro-remediation, where you use microorganisms, and compost can really help out a lot with that to clean the soils as well. And there's also a way to do this in water bodies using effective microorganisms. A friend of mine makes mud balls out of these things. We dry them and we throw them out into the bodies of water. They sink to the bottom, and these microorganisms form colonies at the bottom of these polluted waters, and they break apart, they ingest the toxins, and they basically poo them out or sequester them by binding them with other elements so that they can't be uptaken in the marine life. So she has a fun, beneficial mud ball every year, and this fall, we're going to be hosting that here at Smiling Hogshead Ranch, so we're looking forward to that. It's going to be the first weekend in October. So we have lots of different events that we do. We have a public calendar on our website. It's a Tumblr site. You can access it by going to smilinghogsheadranch.org. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So we try to keep an active web presence just so people can keep up with us, and we have that online calendar so people can know when we're having work days and come out and plug in. We post a lot of things to interesting meetup groups like the Green New Yorkers meetup group, Permaculture NYC, Green Phoenix Permaculture, Farming in the City, Just Foods Farming in the City websites. And then sometimes when we have bike related activities, we'll post it to some biking meetup groups, and sometimes, you know, if we're doing a workshop on how to use mycelium to micro-remediate soils, we'll post it to like the New York Mycological Society and things like that. We have different, we work with a bunch of different interesting people. We hosted, you know, the Hortz Urban Ag Conference, one of the tracks for that a couple weekends ago. We've worked with environmental artists to myceliate bags of mushrooms out here. We've had some school trips, service days, where school kids come out and do some work. We'd like to do more of this type of stuff, and we're really looking forward to that as well. So let's keep on walking back a little bit, and we'll get a little bit closer look at these mushrooms in the mulch back here. So if you look down here, all along up to where that barrel is and back to where these tarps are, we've used mulch last year. We boiled it to get all the other bacteria or fungi that might have been on it, and just clean it up really good. And you can see all the mycelium growing on it. This is really good stuff. You see the thread-like structures there. And these are growing down into the soil, out in all directions. They'll form a dense network, and you can see that coloration just coming through. It actually has a pretty good smell to it as well. So the point of this again is to clean these soils. This is right on top of the railroad tracks here, and we hope to have this track be kind of a main thoroughfare through our garden. And then on either side, over here we have about a dozen blueberry bushes. We have serviceberry over here. We have a pawpaw planted over there. We have 2 nectarines just ahead of us, and then 2 more pawpaws over there. So eventually this will essentially be a perennial edible forest, and there'll be this nice kind of post-industrial walking path going through it. And as you come down here, you can just harvest fruit and berries and nuts. And even if our year-to-year lease expires, this will persist. It's going to keep on growing. And the wonderful thing about perennial trees and fruit-bearing trees is that while you do have to care for them and nurture them the first several years, they just get more productive over time, and you have to deal with them less and less over time. So we're really interested in that idea of like increased production, decreased labor. So as we move forward, we won't have to focus on this area as much. It'll be done, it'll be planted. We can come in and do our pruning at the beginning and ends of the seasons. We can fertilize when we need to, but really we won't have to focus on it as much. It'll just be something that's there. It'll be a public benefit, and anybody coming through here, there's no fences around any of this place, so anybody coming through here can benefit from all that stuff. So this part of the garden we just expanded into this year. We got a grant from the Citizens Committee NYC, amazing group. They have been funding us since day one, essentially. They go out on limbs for people. So check them out if you're interested in starting something like this and you're in the city. This used to be a squatter settlement, or just a hobo encampment. Immediately after they decommissioned this track, there was people living back here from what I understand, and they just kept their trash here. They just put it in, they just kept piles and piles and piles and piles of trash. And it got grown over in the subsequent decades. There were vines and poison ivy and just all kind of ill stuff. And we came out here and we had a 3-day weekend. We hit it hard. I promoted the mess out of it on every social network that I knew. We wrote a press release for it. We talked to the community board about it. We talked to the Long Island City Community Development Partnership, and just like, we had over 50 volunteers come out over those 3 days. Some of them came multiple times, and we removed over 100 contractor bags full of trash. We put them down on the curb. The Department of Sanitation came and picked it up for us, and we sheet mulched this area. And we've been having workshops back here. We had some tea and cookies that an artist put on, and just get people together to kind of just informally just have tea and cookies. No set agenda or like talking points, it's just tea and cookies. And then we had a herbal tea making workshop back here. We had a biodynamic gardening workshop back here. We had one of the instructors during the horticultural conference have their workshop back here. And then we have yoga every other weekend back here on Sundays at 11 o'clock. So we're really just trying to activate more spaces that used to just be trash, like turning dump site into an active cultural space, and really hitting on all these points about transforming the idea of waste into an idea of production or input. So with our kitchen scraps or food waste, that's actually a nutrient that needs to be put back into our soil. With our stormwater that goes into our gutters and makes combined sewage overflows and damages all of our open bodies of water around all these cities. Stormwater is actually an input into so many things that we need to capture and use. Having land in a city that's so dense and people just can't find a place to sprawl out, there's not enough parks, there's not enough open space, real estate is at a premium, and then having a piece of it that's just trashed and not being used, just looking at that with a fresh set of eyes and understanding that that is an opportunity for culture to happen, and cleaning it up and offering it to really culture creators And allowing that to happen is really what we're all about here. And we encourage folks to come out and visit us, get to know some of the people working, come with your ideas of how to improve, come with workshop ideas, come with a group of people who can come and just occupy the space and be here and make it a pleasant place to be. That's really what we want. We want people to engage with us, and it's not in a residential area. This is an industrial area. You have to kind of be coming here to come here. It's not something that you're going to pass, go into too many different places. So the idea is to make it a destination within itself, and to encourage people to come over to this side of the tracks here in Long Island City. A lot of the stuff is happening on the other side of the tracks. 5 Points is right across the way. That's a tragedy within itself. And then there's PS1 and all the waterfront development. This is something different than all of that, and we really hope to keep it different and keep it really grassroots, really community minded, and just open to the public. That's what we're really shooting for here. So check us out, smilinghogsheadranch.org.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.